Well, the talk title, pithy as I know it is, about notes from the first 3 months of an open source microenterprise. When I actually sat down to write the talk, I realised the thing that was most relevant to the open hardware movement was really the stuff that came before that. It was the actual building of the product and the building of the brand, really, that became MeArm. I suppose what is a MeArm? So as Gareth has said very kindly, but this is the tagline I usually trot out, which is an open source pocket-sized robot arm you can build with nothing but a screwdriver and enthusiasm. And it came out the important part of that for me is the open source. That's the reason behind making the company and making the product in itself, because it actually came out of me seeing something else that I wanted to sort of build upon and build myself. So MeArm the business actually came second, and that's myself and 5 other directors who have set up in the Innovation Centre in Loughborough with 2 laser cutters and a chap called Nico, who is currently churning these out, and we're going through a lot of experiences which I'll sort of cover towards the end of the talk. So with open source being the most important thing to me, and probably to the room as well, since we're here for the Open Hardware User Group, I'd like to sort of go through talk about open hardware and its definition, because although, again, it's something that we're all into, there seems to be different understandings of what open hardware means. So this is the open hardware definition from freedomdefined.org. That a number of us have signed up. I know Andrew's on the list as well. So a term for tangible artifacts, machines, devices and other physical things whose design has been released to the public in such a way that anyone can make, modify, distribute and use those things. And now it goes on then to talk about the word distribute and what that means, and the freedoms put onto that, and really it's sort of broken down further. And this is a logo we see a lot of places: to study, modify, distribute, make and sell those things. And although it's really comes down to the making and sell part, where there is some sort of contention, but for me and Freedom Defined and the Open Hardware Organisation, really where you see this gear sign, it should have all these things allowed. But as open hardware has become more and more popular, there seems to be less onus on actually sharing the files. So although I see the gear logo more and more, I'm actually finding it harder and harder to find files. And so before celebrating and talking about open hardware, I now apply what I call the, actually, so this is a slide to prompt me to talk about how open hardware actually helped me. So I'm a chemist, and for the last 11 years I ran an electronics business. And I learned the little I know about electronics by looking under the bonnet of products from these guys mainly, tracking down their files, opening them up, moving things around, even sending boards away to be produced, so I could pop them in a drawer as a little project to do one day when I have the time. Doesn't happen, but I think, you know, the little I know about electronics I've learned from open source. So yeah, so the 10-minute rule is this thing that I came up with. So before writing about a great open source project, take 10 minutes to try and find the source files. And that is, you know, that can be harder than you think. I mean, those that do similar things, that like to sort of kick the tiles, open the bonnet, it's often very hard to find these files, and that's, you know, probably not due to obfuscation, but just because they've been shared somewhere obscurely, and you know, they've just not been pointed towards. So people like SparkFun are very good at sharing their files. So on the product page, you can just click straight through and open the files. Whereas other people, it's a lot harder to find. You have to find the GitHub and these sort of things. But I think if you can't find them within 10 minutes, you can, you know, I think justifiably send the creator an email and say, you know, I can't find your files. You know, you say you're open, you know, you've said you're open source, so can you just, you know, can you point me towards them? And also perhaps, you know, it might be an idea to make it a little more a little more accessible, you know, just put something on to show where they are. So then so why is open source great for a micro-enterprise? I didn't realise I was a micro-enterprise really until Andrew asked me about a micro-enterprise's perspective. But this is why I think open source is great for us. So by open sourcing your products, you find nice people. You know, people who will help you out. They'll build your product, help build your brand as they share it and make on. And really as well, you can help those nice people out because you're allowing them to make and sell these things. If they want to knock out a batch for a workshop or anything like that, even, you know, to sell on eBay, they can. And as they're building those things, they're learning more and more about the product, and they can feed that back to you and help you out. Of course, the pitfall of that is not nice people. So they get all the same stuff as the nice people, but they don't help you build your product, and they don't help you build your brand because they take it for themselves. They don't feed back. I mean, you can always look at the stuff they're making as well. I mean, right now the MeArm's for sale on Taobao, and there's a couple of different versions of it. One of them is radically different, and although he's not shared the files, I should be able to get hold of the product and have a look at actually and see what he's done and learn from it. And the thing, I suppose, that the worry is then you're helping these not nice people because you're just giving them your stuff. But the alternative, of course, we know is copywriting things or using your design right. So then, for that, and for me, the not nice people, when you copyright things, actually get more stuff than the nice people because you're not giving that away. All of the nice people are saying, "That's fine, that's theirs. I'm not going to copy that, you know, because they don't want me to." They might still help you build your brand. They might still love your product. But the people who are just taking are actually getting more stuff. I mean, still, the people that are just taking it aren't building your product, aren't helping you build your product, and they're not helping build your brand. But also, you're not helping the nice people. You know, they're not able to access what you're giving out. So, I suppose that's the preamble on my stance on open source. And open source actually helped me buy my first laser cutter. You guys may know this product inside the case, a little thing called Raspberry Pi. Seems to have been fairly popular. And these guys, Adafruit, I used to be a distributor for, and they were building this case, but they just couldn't build it fast enough. So they actually, well, I wanted to buy more of them to sell in the UK. And they said, well, why don't you produce it for us in the UK? So I went away, asked a bunch of companies if they could cut it for me, and got a resounding, well, a terrible response really, and ended up buying a laser cutter and started making these for Adafruit. I mean, there were some other guys as well, based close to here, I think, that were also making a great case, couldn't make it fast enough, offered to help them out. Didn't take me up on the offer, don't know what happened to them. But this product and a few others actually helped me buy my first laser cutter. And from that, and looking at other open source products, I started finding things on Thingiverse, cutting them and knowing how things like acrylic and wood and how all those things cut. So that's really how I first got the laser cutter in hand. And then moving on a fair bit, so I had this, you know, I was sort of cutting things fairly regularly that I saw and loved, and I saw this Kickstarter for the U-arm, which you can see here, big open source logo, two arms, cheersing, fantastic. And I saw this, oh, that's amazing, and I can cut one of these in the workshop, brilliant. So 10-minute rule, went off to try and find the files. Couldn't find them anywhere. They said, you know, once the Kickstarter's over, we'll share the files. Great. Well, you know, it's not open source now. That's open source, you know, in the future. Keep the logo off until that happens. I mean, as a disclaimer, they've now shared the files. I mean, November this year, they published all the files, and we've been in communication. I think Aaron put me in touch with them, and yeah, all the files are shared. But for 10 months, there were no files out there. So that sort of started me off in making my own version, because again, I'd seen this cool laser cut robot arm, and I thought I like that. also, they said there was to be a tool for education, and $185. I probably wouldn't give that to my daughter to play with because she'd break my toy. And you know, I thought, what sort of level, you know, would not happy destroying, but I'd be less bothered about giving it to a kid and having them breaking it. In which, you know, is a learning experience, as we know. So decided to make my own version, but be very, very cheap. So I think, yeah, so from that, oh right, okay, too expensive, but yeah, so these things as well, very beautiful, very desirable, and as I say, so as of 2014, files are published. Right, yes. So then, as I started putting together the first draft of the MeArm, I found some other great open source hardware which I was able to put together. And in my, well, over the last sort of 10 years of using open hardware, I've come up with this: don't ask, do tell. Because again, you find a great piece of open hardware, and if you can find the files, being a nice person, you say, hey guys, is it okay if I make your great open source hardware? And you don't always get the response that you're expecting, which would be, oh yeah, of course, it's open source, everyone can make this. You know, we're all happy and cool. So people say, oh, I'd rather you didn't. So again, by you asking, you're actually putting up another potential barrier to using and giving the, you know, the not nice people, again, another advantage, because they've not asked and they're just going to go ahead and use it. But from my own experience in open hardware, I'd say do tell. So if you use someone's open hardware product, please tell them that it's that energy of people using your projects, you know, around the world that means you're going to do it more. So so don't ask them to use the project if they've already open sourced it, but do tell them about it. So don't ask, do tell. So this is one of the things that I used to build the MeArm. So this is the PlotClock by Dew, and this thing came on Thingiverse. I thought, brilliant, laser cut. Could knock one of those out and built one very quickly. By midday, having seen it at 9, I'd gone through 3 iterations, made a couple of little improvements for my laser cutter, republished it and got it working. But it's got some really, really clever features on it. So the way that, first of all, the way the acrylic was laid out on the sheet was very smart. In fact, on the picture that's on Thingiverse, doesn't have the construction method, but the construction method we actually use in the MeArm is taken from this, where the screws self-tap into the acrylic. And of course, by having the files, you can see exactly how big those need to be. So the first version of the MeArm was actually the levers from the PlotClock, just extended. And me sort of squinting at the U-arm to try and work out how they did things. And the base actually is also taken from something open source from Aaron. So Aaron's Arduino holder, which was like one of the first 1,000 things on Thingiverse. Yes, and copied all over the world. 248,000. That's ridiculous. Yeah. So this is the first MeArm, and I was fairly pleased with it. You know, it moved about. It didn't have a claw or anything, and it found a place on my desk where things that I make sort of gravitate to the space behind my monitor, which is where all those great inventions go. You know, you do a cool thing, or you come up with that idea. You can even make it, and you just go, oh, this is fantastic, and you put it down, it gravitates. And then suddenly you see on Hackaday your idea, but someone else has made it, shared it, you know, publicised. So it was creeping towards that space, and I just put it on Thingiverse. I'm very fortunate for me, a chap called Jack Howar, who actually lives in Nottingham, which is where I'm based, and was the only real regular. We had an open Friday where people would come in and, you know, have a cup of coffee and talk and buy stuff and what have you. But Jack's a very talented mechanical engineer, so Jack saw this. Oh, that's okay. Worked on the design constraints, yeah, so these were the design constraints we initially put out. Must be cuttable from a 300 by 200 millimeter piece of acrylic, which fits the smallest laser cutters. Only standard M3 screws and nuts, which are nice and cheap and available, and must use cheap hobby servos. So that was all to keep it within this sort of, I mean, the £30 level was at, which is what I set for the education thing. It was, that was kind of for a retail price. So really, you could put together this for about £10. So that was the thing behind it. So Jack came back using these design constraints with this. This is the MeArm V0.2. And this thing is amazing. It's really, really well built. It's got all these little cross sections where they strengthen it. It's got a great gripper. But the only problem was Jack made this without a laser CAD. So he made it in CAD and without being able to test the servos. So when we put this thing together, it was just too heavy. So one of the design constraints being those cheap hobby servos, we couldn't use them. So although it was a really beautiful thing, it didn't quite work, but lots of really good ideas came from it. So we were able to work together and create the next version by taking pieces out, reworking and changing bits about. So that was the first real collaborative part. And I thought that was the last of the version 0.2 until last month this came up. So this is available in Mexico now from a store called Het Proto, who obviously saw it and thought it looked good. Didn't bother reading or attributing it to us or anything like that. I suppose if they'd have read around it a bit more, they would have found out it doesn't work. So I have told them that it doesn't work, and they're now building the latest version, and they promised they will attribute this time. But that's what happens to bad people. They build things that don't work. So moving on, we move to the version 0.3. And quickly on from that to version 0.4. So this is what we currently have. So this is the MeArm in Heisenberg blue. And this is when things started to really get interesting. We started to share this, and it was pop up here and there. And actually, you know, put my coding hat on. Did a half job of the inverse kinematics library. Let's see what that is. So, but this is where Bob Stone over here joins in, and frankly started showing off. Bob and Nick Moriarty put together an Arduino library for the inverse kinematics for the robot arm, and the inverse kinematics is with robotics. You don't want to move the levers. You want to move X, Y, Z in space to pick something up, and Bob put together the library for Arduino, and then for Raspberry Pi, and then BeagleBone Black, and then he made it do all sorts of crazy things like doing a recorder and having a leap motion thing. And so Bob got on board, and a lot of other people as well started, and then it just got a bit crazy, really. I mean, things like this started happening around the world. So this guy here, this is Ted Lien, who is from Taiwan, and he's currently touring the island and has been for the last few months. He does 2 workshops a week with the MeArm. That one down there is a workshop in South Africa. People started making them in Peru and selling them in South Africa. We snuck this one onto the gadget show because I got a strange phone call asking if it could drive a digger. And I just said, yeah, why not? So it's really gathered momentum from there. Didn't set my timer, so I don't know how I'm doing, really. Good. I'll just carry on, which is nearly... So really that was before MeArm Limited came along, and I'd like to talk more about the business. Is not so relevant to open hardware, not because we're closing things, just really because the last 3 months has been taken up with production and QC. We ran a Kickstarter over Christmas, which we thought did quite well, and then these guys from Sheffield came along and are currently absolutely storming with their new thing. I'm sure Paul will cover this now. And then this talk in amongst the maelstrom. So, I mean, from the Kickstarter, we're about to launch the version 1, which a lot of work's been done in-house, but we've taken stuff from the open hardware community. And yeah, since it's up till now, I'll stop talking. Thanks all for your attention.